The plane touched down in Portland, and I was already itching to escape the recycled air and the weight of the last 10 days. My name's Colin Mercer, and I just wrapped a grueling business trip. Meetings stacked like bricks, each one heavier than the last. All I wanted was to get home, crack open a beer, and sink into the couch with Alyssa beside me. We'd been married 7 years, and though things weren't perfect, I thought we were solid. I thought wrong. The cab ride from the airport was quiet, just the hum of tires on wet pavement and the driver's low radio chatter. I stared out the window, watching the city blur into suburbs, my mind half on the contracts I'd signed and half on the takeout I'd order when I got home. But when we turned onto my street, something felt off. Our house looked wrong. Too still. Too dark. Then I saw it. For sale sign stabbed into the front yard like a knife. My stomach twisted. I paid the driver, grabbed my suitcase, and stepped onto the porch. That's when I noticed the garbage bags. 3 of them, black and bulging, slumped against the door like they'd been waiting for me to deal with them. My life, reduced to plastic. I fumbled for my keys, but the lock didn't budge. New deadbolt. I tried again, harder, as if sheer will could make it turn. Nothing. I stepped back, my breath catching in the cold night air, and peered through the front window. The living room was empty, no couch, no coffee table, no trace of the life we built. Just bare walls and a few dust motes floating in the streetlight's glow. My heart pounded as I dialed Alyssa's number. 1 ring. 2. She picked up on the 3rd, her voice sharp and final. "Deal with it," she said, then hung up. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, waiting for the world to make sense again. It didn't. I called back. Straight to voicemail. I tried the door again, then the back door, then every window I could reach. All locked. All wrong. The neighbor across the street, Donnie, was out on his porch, pretending to check his mailbox. I caught his eye, but he turned away fast, like he'd seen a ghost. He knew something. Everyone did, except me. I sank onto the porch steps, the garbage bags looming beside me. My suitcase sat at my feet, a reminder of the life I'd left behind 10 days ago, a life that didn't exist anymore. I unzipped one of the bags, half expecting to find trash. Instead, it was my clothes, crumpled and tossed in like they meant nothing. Shirts I'd worn to board meetings, jeans we'd picked out together at the mall, even the tie I'd worn at our wedding. The second bag held books, a few framed photos with the glass cracked, and my old laptop, the one I hadn't used in years. The third was random socks, a coffee mug, a half-empty bottle of cologne. No note. No explanation. Just my past, discarded. I wanted to scream, to bang on the door until someone told me what was happening, but the street was quiet, and I was too tired to fight the silence. I pulled out my phone and searched for the real estate agent's number on the sign. "Miss Fowler," it said. I dialed, and a cheerful voice answered, like she'd been expecting me. "Oh, Mr. Mercer," she said, her tone shifting to something careful. "Your wife told me you were traveling indefinitely." She said the sale was urgent. I gripped the phone tighter. "She didn't tell me anything," I said. There was a pause, then a soft, "I'm so sorry. I thought you knew." I hung up, my hands shaking. Alyssa had done this, erased me, sold our home, changed the locks, all while I was shaking hands and signing deals across the country. I thought about the last time we'd talked, a quick call from my hotel room. She'd sounded distracted, but I chalked it up to stress. Now I wondered what she'd been doing while I was gone. Packing, planning, laughing at how easy it was to cut me out. I stood up, pacing the porch, trying to piece it together. We'd had arguments, sure, about money, about time, about the little things that pile up, but nothing like this. Nothing that ended with my life in garbage bags and her voice telling me to deal with it. I called my lawyer, Celine, even though it was late. She answered on the second ring, her voice calm but ready. "Tell me everything," she said. I did, stumbling over the words, the for sale sign, the bags, Alyssa's coldness. Celine listened, then said, "Don't touch anything else. Take pictures. I'll start digging tomorrow." I nodded, though she couldn't see me, and hung up. The porch felt smaller now, the night heavier. I dragged the bags to the side of the house, out of sight, and sat back on the steps. Donnie was still outside, watering plants he'd already watered. "Hey," I called, my voice rough. He froze, then shuffled over, keeping his distance. "Did you see her leave?" I asked. He scratched his neck, eyes on the ground. "Couple days ago," he mumbled. "Moving truck came. She was in a hurry. Didn't say where she was going." I waited for more, but he just backed away, muttering about needing to check his sprinklers. I let him go. He wasn't the one I needed answers from. I opened my phone again, scrolling through texts, emails, anything that might have warned me. Nothing. Just work stuff and a few old messages from Alyssa about picking up groceries or fixing the sink. I stopped at one from a month ago. Miss you. Come home soon. My chest ached. Had that been a lie too? I couldn't stay on the porch forever. I booked a hotel room downtown, but before I left, I took Celine's advice and snapped photos. Every bag, the sign, the empty windows. Proof, she'd said. Of what? I didn't know yet. The cab ride to the hotel was a blur, the city lights smearing past like they belonged to someone else's life. I checked in, dropped my suitcase by the bed, and stood at the window, staring at nothing. Alyssa's words kept looping in my head. Deal with it. I didn't know how. But I knew I couldn't stay here, in this city where every corner reminded me of her. I thought of June Bay, Oregon, a place I'd visited once years ago, where the ocean stretched forever and the air felt clean. It was the only place I could imagine breathing again. I opened my laptop, booked a one-way ticket for the next morning, and closed my eyes. The garbage bags were still out there, waiting. But I was done waiting for answers that weren't coming. Tomorrow, I'd start over. Alone. The plane dipped low over Oregon's coastline, and I pressed my forehead against the window, watching the gray Pacific churn below. I'm Colin Mercer, and I left everything behind, my home, my wife, my life stuffed into 3 garbage bags, because staying in that city one more day would have suffocated me. June Bay was my reset button, a place I'd stumbled across years ago on a solo drive. The ocean had felt like it could swallow my problems whole back then, and I needed that now more than ever. The airport in Portland was a quick stop, grabbed my 2 bags, rented a car, and headed west. The drive was quiet, just the hum of the engine and the occasional burst of static from a radio station fading in and out. Pine trees lined the road, their branches heavy with mist, and every mile felt like I was peeling off a layer of the man I'd been. I pulled into June Bay by noon, the town smaller than I remembered, but just as raw, clapboard shops, a single diner, and the ocean roaring like it had something to prove. My only contact here was Gregory Wynn, a former client who'd become a friend over late-night calls about code and contracts. He'd moved out here years ago to start a tech cooperative, and when I told him what happened, Alyssa's betrayal, the house, the bags, he didn't hesitate. I've got a guest cabin, he said. No rent. Stay as long as you need. I wasn't one for handouts, but pride wasn't something I could afford right now. I found his place just outside town, a cedar-shingled house tucked into a clearing with a smaller cabin out back. Gregory was waiting on the porch, his lanky frame leaning against the railing, a grin breaking through his beard. You look like hell, he said, pulling me into a quick hug. I managed a laugh, my first in days. Feel like it too, I said, and followed him inside. The cabin was simple, a bed, a desk, a wood stove, but it was mine, at least for now. Gregory's wife, Greta, was in the main house, setting out coffee and a plate of homemade scones. She had this quiet way about her, like she could see through you without judging. You don't have to talk about it, she said, pouring me a mug. But when you're ready, I'm here. I nodded, grateful for the space. Their daughter, Ash, bounded in, all teenage energy and purple-streaked hair. You're the city guy, right? She asked, snagging a scone. Dad says you're some kind of tech wizard. I shrugged. The weight of my old life, founder of Omnicore Solutions, the guy who'd built a firm from nothing. Feeling like it belonged to someone else. Just a guy who's good with numbers, I said. She rolled her eyes but smiled, and for a moment, I remembered what it felt like to believe in something new. That first week, I didn't do much. Unpacked my bags, set up my laptop, walked the beach until my shoes were caked with sand. The ocean was louder than I expected, each wave crashing like it was trying to drown out the noise in my head. Alyssa's voice still echoed, deal with it, and every time it did, I walked faster, letting the wind rip it away. I kept my phone on silent, but I checked it too often, half hoping for an explanation, half dreading one. Nothing came. No calls, no texts, just a few work emails I didn't answer. Gregory stopped by one evening, a bottle of local stout in hand. You're brooding, he said, cracking it open. Come to the co-op tomorrow. Meet some people. It'll do you good. I wanted to say no, to stay in the cabin and let the world forget me, but his eyes had that stubborn glint I couldn't argue with. Fine, I said, but don't expect me to talk much. The co-op was a converted warehouse, all exposed beams and mismatched furniture. Coders tapped away at laptops, a graphic designer sketched on a tablet, and a couple of guys debated server specs over coffee. Gregory introduced me as a consultant, not a refugee from his own life, and I was grateful for that. The work was small-scale, helping a startup tweak their app, brainstorming a payment system for a local farm's online store, but it felt good to be useful again. Nobody here knew about the for sale sign or the garbage bags. They just saw a guy who could solve problems. Greta stopped by one afternoon, her therapist calm like a blanket over the room. "You're good at this," she said, watching me explain cash flow to a nervous founder. "It's not just numbers with you. It's people." I brushed it off, but her words stuck. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd spent too long chasing deals and not enough time building something real. Nights were harder. The cabin was too quiet, and my mind wouldn't shut off. I'd lie awake, replaying every moment with Alyssa, searching for the crack I'd missed. Had she been unhappy for years? Was there someone else? The questions piled up, but answers didn't come. One night, I grabbed my jacket and walked to the bluff overlooking the bay. The stars were sharp, the kind you don't see in the city, and the ocean stretched out like it could carry my anger away. I thought about my old life, Omnicore, the boardroom, the house we'd painted together. It was gone, all of it, and I was here, starting from nothing. But standing there, salt air stinging my face, I didn't feel empty. I felt possible, like I could choose what came next. Gregory kept nudging me toward the co-op, and I started going every day. The work wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. A woman needed help with her bakery's website. A kid had an idea for a recycling app. I listened, suggested, fixed what I could. Ash dropped in sometimes, sketching in the corner or asking questions about coding. "You're not as boring as you look," she said once, and I laughed, surprised at how easy it felt. Greta's advice lingered too: process, don't repress. I wasn't ready to unpack everything, but I started writing things down. Not a diary, just fragments, dates, moments, things Alyssa had said that didn't add up. It helped, a little. By the end of the week, I'd settled into a rhythm. Mornings at the co-op, afternoons on the beach, evenings in the cabin with a book or beer. The betrayal still stung, but it wasn't the only thing I felt anymore. June Bay was giving me something I hadn't expected: space to rebuild. Not the life I'd lost, but something new. Something mine. I didn't know what it would look like yet, but for the first time in days, I wanted to find out. The ocean roared below, and I stood there, letting it drown out the past. Tomorrow, I'd go back to the co-op. Tomorrow, I'd keep going. I'm Colin Mercer, and I never thought I'd be the guy starting over in a rented cabin on the Oregon coast. But here I am, piecing myself back together after my wife, Alyssa, gutted our life like it was nothing. June Bay had given me a soft landing: Gregory's co-op, the ocean's endless roar, the quiet of a town that didn't know my failures. But the past wasn't done with me. I'd been avoiding my phone, letting emails pile up like unpaid bills, until one morning I couldn't ignore it anymore. I sat at the cabin's rickety desk, coffee going cold, and opened my inbox. Most of it was junk, meeting reminders for a company I no longer ran, spam about cloud storage. But one subject line stopped me cold: Omnicore Solutions, board update. My stomach churned. Omnicore was my company, the tech firm I'd built from late-night code and handshakes, the one that funded our house, our vacations, Alyssa's endless shoe collection. I clicked the email, half expecting a clerical error. Instead, it was a formal notice. My name had been removed from the board of directors, effective immediately. No explanation. No call. Just a digital kick to the curb from the empire I'd created. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me, and tried to make sense of it. I'd stepped back from day-to-day operations years ago, trusting my partners to handle things while I focused on big clients. But I was still the founder, the name on the letterhead. Or I had been. The email mentioned restructuring and mutual agreement, but I hadn't agreed to anything. I grabbed my phone and called Celine Rourke, my lawyer, the only person I trusted to cut through the fog. She picked up fast, her voice sharp and ready. "I was about to call you," she said. "Alyssa filed separation papers 2 days before you got back from your trip. I just got the documents." I froze, the cabin walls closing in. "Separation?" I said, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. "She didn't even tell me she was leaving." Celine's pause was heavy, like she was weighing how much I could handle. "It's not just abandonment, Colin. She's framing you as the one who walked away. And I'm hearing whispers about Omnicore. I need your permission to dig deeper." I didn't hesitate. "Do it," I said. "Find out everything." I hung up and stared at the laptop screen, the Omnicore logo mocking me from the email's footer. Alyssa had been busy while I was gone selling our house, locking me out, and now this. I thought about the last board meeting I'd attended 6 months ago. Everyone had been all smiles, toasting to a new contract I'd landed. Had they been planning this then? Or was it her, pulling strings I didn't see? I stood up, pacing the small cabin, my boots thudding against the wood floor. The betrayal wasn't just personal anymore. It was professional, surgical, like she'd spent years mapping out how to erase me. I wanted to call her, to demand answers, but I'd already heard her voice, deal with it, and I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of hearing mine crack. Instead, I started digging myself. I logged into old accounts, checked shareholder records, anything I could access from the cabin's spotty Wi-Fi. Most of my credentials were locked out, passwords changed, access revoked. But I found a backup drive in my bag, one I hadn't touched in years. It had financials, emails, early board meeting notes. Nothing concrete yet, but enough to know I wasn't imagining things. Someone had planned this, and I'd been too busy signing deals to notice. The cabin felt too small, so I grabbed my jacket and headed to the beach. The wind was sharp, slicing through my clothes, but I needed it to clear my head. The waves crashed hard, each one dragging sand and secrets back into the deep. I thought about Omnicore, how it started in a rented office with bad coffee and big dreams. I'd coded the first prototype myself, stayed up nights tweaking algorithms while Alyssa slept. She'd been proud of me then, or so I thought, bringing me takeout, framing our first profit statement like it was art. When had that changed? I kicked at a rock, watching it skitter into the surf. The truth was, I didn't know her anymore. Maybe I never had. But I knew myself, and I wasn't the guy who'd roll over and let this happen. I built Omnicore once. I could build something else, something she couldn't touch. Back at the cabin, I called Gregory. He was at the co-op, but he stepped outside to talk. They kicked me out of my own company, I said, skipping the details. He didn't push, just listened, then said, "You're more than that place, man. Come to the co-op tomorrow. Work on something new." I didn't want to. Grief was easier in private, but he was right. Hiding wouldn't fix this. I spent the rest of the day sorting through what I had, the backup drive, a few old contacts who might still talk, and Celine's promise to dig. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I wrote down everything I remembered, meetings, conversations, times Alyssa had asked about the company in ways that fell off now. The list was short, but it was something, a map to whatever she was hiding. That night, I sat by the wood stove, the fire crackling as I sipped a beer. The cabin smelled of cedar and salt, and for the first time in days, I felt a spark of something like control. Alyssa thought she'd won, sold the house, trashed my things, taken my company, but she'd miscalculated. I wasn't gone. I was here, planning, waiting. Celine would find the paper trail. I'd find the truth. And when I did, I wouldn't shout or beg. I'd move quietly, like she had, and build something new. Not out of spite, but because I could. Because I was still me, even without the house, the boardroom, the wife. The ocean hummed outside, steady and endless, and I let it carry the weight of her lies. Tomorrow, I'd go to the co-op. Tomorrow, I'd start fighting back, not with noise, but with steps. One at a time, until I was whole again. I'm Colin Mercer, and I've been in June Bay for a few weeks now, trying to outrun the wreckage Alyssa left behind. Our house sold, my life in garbage bags, my company stolen. The ocean helps, its endless churn swallowing some of the anger, but it's the work that's keeping me grounded. Gregory's Tech Co-op has become my anchor, a place where I can be useful without anyone asking about the past. I'm not the guy who founded Omnicore Solutions here. I'm just a consultant helping small dreamers make their ideas stick. It's enough for now. This morning, I drove into town early, the fog still clinging to the pines, and parked outside the community space Gregory had been raving about. He called it a hub for locals with big plans but small budgets, and he thought I'd fit right in. I wasn't so sure. Mentoring sounded like a lot of talking, and I'd been happier keeping my head down, but I owed him for the cabin, so I grabbed my coffee and walked inside. The place was a converted barn, all rough beams and mismatched tables, with a hum of energy that hit me as soon as I stepped through the door. A couple of coders were arguing over an open laptop, a woman was sketching logos on a napkin, and someone was pacing while talking funding on their phone. It felt alive, like the early days of Omnic or before boardrooms and betrayals took over. Gregory waved me over to a corner table where a guy named Lorenzo was waiting, a barista from the diner with a nervous smile and a notebook full of scribbles. "I want to start a food truck," he said, pushing the notebook toward me. "Tacos, but different. Local fish, weird spices. I don't know where to start." His hands were shaking a little, like he expected me to laugh him off. I didn't. I flipped through his notes, rough sketches of a truck, a menu with prices circled and scratched out, and saw something real. "You've got a vision," I said. "Let's break it down. Costs first, then permits." His shoulders relaxed, and we spent an hour mapping out a plan, from propane tanks to health inspections. By the time he left, he was grinning, clutching his notebook like it was gold. I didn't notice the morning slipping away until a woman named Priya tapped my shoulder. She ran a nonprofit, something about connecting rural kids with coding camps, and she needed help scaling without losing her soul. "Everyone says go bigger," she told me, her voice sharp with frustration, "but bigger doesn't mean better." I got it. Omnicore had grown too fast, and I'd lost sight of why I started it. We sat by a window, the ocean glinting outside, and talked strategy, partnerships over investors, local grants over corporate cash. She listened hard, jotting notes, and when we finished, she said, "You're not what I expected." I raised an eyebrow. "What did you expect?" She laughed. "Someone colder. You actually care." I shrugged it off, but her words stuck. Maybe I was finding pieces of myself I'd forgotten, pieces Alyssa hadn't touched. The community space became my routine. Mornings there, afternoons walking the beach, evenings in the cabin sorting through Celine's updates on the legal mess. Lorenzo stopped by again, this time with a budget draft that wasn't half bad. I tweaked his numbers, showed him how to negotiate with suppliers, and he started calling me coach, which made me wince but also smile. Priya brought her team one day, and we brainstormed ways to fund her next camp without begging Silicon Valley for scraps. Others came too, a baker with a delivery app idea, a fisherman wanting to sell direct to restaurants. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew how to ask the right questions, how to turn dreams into steps. Each win, no matter how small, felt like reclaiming something Alyssa had tried to take, my sense of who I was. Gregory noticed the shift. One afternoon, he found me at the barn, sipping lukewarm coffee between sessions. "You're good at this," he said, leaning against a beam. "Better than you think." I brushed it off, but he kept going. "I'm serious. You're not just helping, you're building something. These folks trust you." He paused, then grinned. "We should make it official. Start a think tank. Roundtable style, no egos, just ideas." I laughed, thinking he was joking, but his eyes were steady. "Call it whatever you want," he said. "Just don't say no." I didn't. The idea took root, and by evening, we were sketching it out over beers at his place. A space for locals to solve problems together. Startups, nonprofits, anyone with a spark. We named it Juniper Table after the trees dotting the coast, tough enough to grow through storms. It felt right, like a promise to myself. No one gets silenced, no one gets discarded. The barn stayed busy, and I stayed with it. Lorenzo's food truck got its first permit, and he brought me a test taco, a halibut with some kind of chili lime sauce that burned my mouth but made me laugh. Priya's nonprofit landed a grant, and she left a thank you note on my table, simple but heavy with gratitude. I kept them all, notes, napkin sketches, budget drafts, in a drawer at the cabin, proof I was doing something that mattered. The work wasn't loud like Omnicore had been, but it was real. People here saw me for what I could do, not what Alyssa had said I'd failed at. Every handshake, every solved problem, was a brick in something new, not a company, but a life. Nights were still tough. I'd sit by the wood stove, the fire popping, and think about her. Not with longing anymore, but with questions. Why had she done it? What had I missed? Celine's emails kept coming, bank records, board minutes, hints Alyssa had been moving money before she left. It wasn't enough to prove anything yet, but it was close. I didn't need revenge, not exactly, but I needed truth. Juniper Table was my answer to that, a place where lies didn't win. I'd show up at the barn tomorrow, same as today, and help someone else build what they believed in. Each step forward was mine, not hers. The ocean hummed outside, steady as always, and I let it carry the weight of her shadow. I wasn't whole yet, but I was getting there. I'm Colin Mercer, and it's been 6 months since I landed in June Bay, trying to rebuild from the ashes Alyssa left, our house sold, my things in garbage bags, my company snatched out from under me. The town's been good to me, better than I deserve some days. Juniper Table, the think tank Gregory and I started, is growing roots, and the community space feels like a second home. I'm mentoring locals, helping them turn ideas into reality, and it's steadying me, piece by piece. The ocean's still my best listener, swallowing my anger when it flares, but I'm learning to live with the quiet too. I keep my phone on silent most days, not because I'm hiding, but because I'm done waiting for apologies that won't come. Then, one morning, it buzzed, a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored it, same as always, and headed to the barn to meet Lorenzo about his food truck's new menu. But when I got back to the cabin that night, the phone was blinking again. Same number. "Colin, please, call me," the message said. Her voice, Alyssa's, cut through the stillness like a blade. I deleted it, my hands unsteady, and turned the phone face down. That was supposed to be the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, another voicemail. Then another. By the end of the month, they were coming daily, sometimes twice. "Let's talk," she'd say, or "You're being childish." Once, it was just, "I'm sorry, okay?" Like that could erase what she'd done. I didn't listen to them all, but I couldn't stop myself from checking. Each one was a hook, pulling at the life I was trying to build. I started keeping count, not because I wanted to, but because it gave me something to grip onto, something to measure the distance between who I'd been and who I was becoming. By the time I stopped counting, there were 247 missed calls and messages. 247 times she'd reached out, and not once did she explain why she'd sold our house, trashed my things, or lied about me to everyone we knew. I saved one message, the last one, where her voice cracked just enough to sound human. "Colin, I didn't mean for it to go this far." I played it once, standing by the cabin's window, the ocean gray and restless outside. Then I deleted it. I didn't need her regret. I needed to keep moving. The calls messed with my head, though. I'd be at the barn, walking Priya through a grant application or helping Lorenzo with his vendor contracts, and I'd catch myself drifting, wondering what Alyssa wanted after all this time. Was she broke? Lonely? Or just bored? I didn't tell anyone about the messages, not Gregory, not Greta, not even Celine, who was still digging into the legal mess Alyssa had left. It felt like carrying a stone in my pocket, heavy but private. I threw myself into Juniper Table instead, showing up earlier, staying later. The barn was full of people who didn't know my past, who didn't care about the guy whose wife rewrote his story. There was a woman starting a community garden, a kid building a surfboard repair shop, a retired teacher with a podcast idea. I listened, advised, fixed what I could. Their trust was clean, uncomplicated, and I leaned into it like a lifeline. One afternoon, Lorenzo brought his food truck to the barn for a test run, serving fish tacos to anyone who'd try them. The smell of grilled cod and lime pulled a crowd, and I stood back, watching him work. He'd been a nervous wreck when we met, but now he was joking with customers, flipping tortillas like he'd been born for this. "You did this," he said, catching my eye between orders. I shook my head. "You did the work," I told him, and meant it. His grin stayed with me, a reminder that I could still do something right. Priya's nonprofit got funded that week too, enough to run her coding camp for a year. She left a bottle of local cider on my table with a note. "Couldn't have done it without you." I took it back to the cabin, cracked it open by the wood stove, and let myself feel the win. Small, but mine. Gregory noticed I was quieter than usual. He cornered me one evening outside the barn, the air sharp with salt and pine. "You okay?" he asked, hands in his pockets. I shrugged, not wanting to lie but not ready to spill. "Just tired," I said. He didn't push, but his wife, Greta, wasn't as easy to dodge. She stopped by the cabin a few days later, carrying a tray of brownies like it was an excuse. "You're carrying something," she said, setting them on the counter. "It's in your eyes." I wanted to brush it off, but her calm was disarming, like she'd wait forever for the truth. "Old ghosts," I said finally, staring at the floor. "They keep calling." She nodded, no surprise in her face. "You don't have to answer," she said. "But you don't have to run either." She left soon after, and her words stuck like salt on my skin. I wasn't running, not anymore, but I wasn't sure what answering looked like either. I stopped checking my phone as much. The calls kept coming, but I let them pile up, unanswered, like driftwood on the shore. I focused on what I could control: Juniper Table, the barn, the people who showed up every day with ideas bigger than their wallets. I helped a fisherman set up an online store, showed a baker how to track inventory without losing her mind. Each problem solved was a step away from Alyssa's voice, her lies, her 247 hooks. I wasn't naive. I knew she'd call again, or worse, show up. But I was starting to believe I could handle it. Not by fighting, but by building. The barn was proof of that. So was Lorenzo's truck, Priya's camp, the drawer full of thank you notes I'd never admit I kept. That night, I walked to the bluff, the stars sharp above the ocean. The waves didn't roar, they hummed, low and steady, like they were telling me to keep going. I thought about the saved message, the one I deleted. I didn't miss her, not really, but I missed the man I'd been before, sure of himself, sure of his place. He was gone, but I was here, and I was enough. The phone stayed silent in my pocket, and I let it. Tomorrow, I'd be back at the barn, helping someone new. Tomorrow, I'd choose what to carry. The ocean stretched out, endless and patient, and I stood there, breathing it in, letting go of the rest. I'm Colin Mercer, and I've been in June Bay for over 6 months now, carving out a new life from the ruins Alyssa left behind, our home sold, my belongings in garbage bags, my company stripped away. Juniper Table keeps me steady, giving me purpose through mentoring locals at the community barn, but the past still claws at me sometimes. Her 247 voicemail stopped a few weeks ago, and I thought that was the end of it, just me, the ocean, and the work. I was wrong. One morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the quiet of the cabin, same as always. I was headed to the barn to help Lorenzo with his food truck's new branding when Greta knocked on the door, her face softer than usual. She held out a plain white envelope. "This was in your mailbox," she said. "No return address." My gut twisted. I took it, the paper cool against my fingers, and waited until she left before opening it. Inside was a legal notice, the kind that changes everything. My grandmother's estate had been settled. She'd passed years ago, but apparently, she'd left me something big: property in Barcelona and stock shares in a solar energy company she'd helped start decades back. The lawyer's note said it was worth over $600,000. I sat down hard, the envelope crumpling in my hand. Then I saw the kicker. The paperwork had been sent to my old address a year ago. Alyssa had been there. She'd known. I stared at the letter, the cabin's wood stove ticking in the silence. My grandmother hadn't been close. Her life was a mystery of postcards and rare visits. But she'd remembered me, trusted me with something real. And Alyssa had buried it. I thought back to last year, when she'd started acting strange, distant one day, clingy the next. Had she seen the papers then? Hidden them while planning her exit? The math checked out. She'd moved out a month after the lawyer's notice would have arrived. I grabbed my phone and called Celine, my lawyer, before I could second-guess myself. She answered on the first ring, her voice all business. "Read me the letter," she said. I did, stumbling over the details: Barcelona, the shares, the $600,000. When I mentioned the mailing date, she went quiet. "That's not an accident," she said finally. "She intercepted it, Colin. This is leverage. I'll request records from the estate lawyer. Sit tight." I hung up, my pulse hammering. Leverage. That word felt like a door cracking open, letting in light I hadn't dared hope for. I should have gone to the barn, but I couldn't move. I kept rereading the letter, tracing the lawyer's neat print like it might disappear. Barcelona, a small flat, the note said, near the sea. I pictured it. Stone walls, salt air, a place Alyssa couldn't touch. The shares were trickier, some old solar company I'd never heard of, but worth enough to change my life. I didn't want the money, not really. I wanted what it meant. My grandmother had seen something in me, something worth keeping safe. And Alyssa had tried to steal it, just like she'd stolen my house, my company, my trust. I stood up, pacing the cabin's small floor, my boots scuffing the wood. The anger was back, sharp and clean, but it wasn't wild like before. It was focused. I grabbed a notebook and started writing dates, details, everything I remembered about last year. The time she'd sorted the mail before I got home, the way she dodged questions about bills. It wasn't proof, but it was close. I walked to the beach, needing air. The sky was heavy, clouds piling over the ocean like they were holding their breath. I thought about calling Alyssa, demanding answers, but what would that get me? Another lie? Instead, I let the waves do the talking, each crash pulling at the knot in my chest. I'd been blindsided before, by the for sale sign, the garbage bags, the boardroom betrayal, but this felt different. This wasn't just about what she'd taken, it was about what I'd gained. A flat in Barcelona. Shares in a company that wasn't Omnicore. A piece of my grandmother's life, handed to me when I needed it most. I kicked at the sand, watching it scatter. Alyssa hadn't counted on this. She'd thought she could erase me, but here I was, holding something she couldn't claim. Back at the cabin, I spread the letter out on the desk, reading it again. The lawyer's contact info was at the bottom, a firm in Seattle. I'd call tomorrow, confirm everything. But for now, I just sat with it. The wood stove was cold, so I lit a fire, the crackle filling the room. I thought about Juniper Table, how it had saved me these past months. Lorenzo's food truck, Priya's coding camp, the baker's delivery app, they weren't just projects. They were proof I could build without her. This inheritance was the same. Not a windfall, but a foundation. I could sell the flat, invest the shares, maybe fund Juniper Table's expansion. Or I could keep it, start fresh somewhere new. The choice was mine, and that felt bigger than the money. Greta stopped by again that evening, her therapist calm like a steady hand. "You okay?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. I didn't tell her about the letter, not yet, but I nodded. "Better than I've been," I said, and it was true. She smiled, like she could see the shift. "Good," she said. "You're tougher than you think." I didn't feel tough, but I felt awake, like I'd been sleepwalking and finally opened my eyes. Alyssa's voicemails were still on my phone, 247 ghosts I hadn't erased. I'd deal with them later, maybe listen one last time before letting them go. For now, I had this, a letter, a chance, a truth she couldn't rewrite. I stayed up late, the fire dying to embers. The ocean hummed outside, low and constant, and I let it settle me. I didn't know what came next, Barcelona, the shares, Alyssa's next move, but I knew I'd face it. Not with shouting or begging, but with quiet steps, like always. Celine would dig, the lawyer would confirm, and I'd keep building. Juniper Table tomorrow, the barn full of dreamers who trusted me. That was enough for now. I folded the letter, tucked it into my drawer with the thank you notes, and closed my eyes. The cabin was still, the world outside waiting. I wasn't running anymore. I was ready. I'm Colin Mercer, and I've been in June Bay for nearly 9 months, piecing together a life I can call mine after Alyssa tore our world apart, our house sold, my things in garbage bags, my company stolen. Juniper Table has been my lifeline, the community barn, a place where I help locals build dreams instead of chasing ghosts. The inheritance letter from my grandmother, Barcelona property, solar company shares, $600,000 worth shifted something in me. It's not just money. It's proof Alyssa didn't get to write my ending. I've been keeping my head down, letting Celine dig into the legal mess while I focus on what's real, Lorenzo's food truck, Priya's coding camp, the slow growth of our think tank. Things were starting to feel steady, like I could breathe without looking over my shoulder. Then Juniper Table caught fire, not literally, but close. A national business podcast featured us, calling our mentorship model grassroots genius. A tech blog ran a profile, and suddenly my inbox was full of inquiries from startups I'd never heard of. They dubbed me the Ghost CEO, spinning stories about where I'd vanished after Omnicore. I didn't love the attention, but it felt good to be seen for something I'd built, not something I'd lost. I gave one interview, a small one, to a local paper. Sometimes life takes everything so you can finally find yourself. I told the reporter, and I meant it. The story went online that night, and by morning, it had spread, shared, retweeted, picked up by bigger outlets. I was at the barn when Gregory slapped a printout on my table, grinning. "You're famous," he said. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't help smiling. Lorenzo was there, testing a new salsa recipe, and he chimed in, "Told you, Coach, you're a big deal." Priya sent me a text, "Don't let it go to your head." It was light, warm, the kind of moment I'd learned to hold on to. I spent the day helping a new guy with a craft brewery pitch, tweaking his numbers while the barn buzzed around me. For a few hours, I forgot about Alyssa, her 247 voicemails, the letter she'd hidden. I was just a guy doing work that mattered, surrounded by people who believed in it too. Then she showed up. I was locking up the barn, the sun dipping low, when I saw her standing by my truck. Alyssa. No warning, no call, just there, in a navy coat and boots, her hair shorter, but her posture the same, like she belonged in my story again. My stomach dropped, but my feet kept moving. I stopped a few paces away, keys tied in my fist. "What are you doing, H?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She shifted, her eyes flicking to the barn, then back to me. "I saw the article," she said. "I wanted to see you." I almost laughed. Wanted to see me? After selling our house, trashing my life, lying about me to everyone? I crossed my arms, waiting. She stepped closer, her perfume faint but familiar, and it hit me like a punch, memories of us picking paint colors, cooking dinner, planning a future she'd thrown away. "You're doing well," she said, like it was a compliment. "This place suits you." I didn't blink. "Why are you really here?" I asked again. She hesitated, and I saw it, the crack in her confidence. But she didn't answer, just stood there, like I owed her time I didn't have. I turned to leave, but she grabbed my sleeve. "Colin, Wait, she said, and there it was, her old voice, the one that used to pull me in. I messed up. I know that. Can we just talk? My chest tightened. Talk. After everything, 247 messages, the intercepted inheritance, the lies about me abandoning her, she thought she could walk back in and talk? I pulled my arm free, stepping back. You don't get to do this, I said. Not here. Not now. Her face hardened, but her eyes were wet, and for a second, I wondered if she was sorry. Then I remembered the garbage bags, the for sale sign, her voice saying deal with it. I didn't owe her anything. Go home, I told her, and walked to my truck. She didn't follow, but I felt her watching me as I drove away, the barn fading in the rear view. I didn't go straight to the cabin. I drove to the bluff instead, needing the ocean's noise to drown out hers. The waves were rough, slamming against the rocks like they were angry for me. I stood there, hands in my pockets, replaying her words. I saw the article. She hadn't come because she missed me. She'd come because I was visible again, because Juniper Table was something she couldn't ignore. I thought about the letter, the $600,000 she tried to hide. Was that why she was here? To see if I'd found out? I kicked at the gravel, my breath sharp in the cold air. I'd been building something good. Lorenzo's truck, Priya's camp, the barn's messy, hopeful chaos, and she thought she could step into it like nothing had happened. I wasn't that guy anymore, the one who'd let her explain away the hurt. I was the guy who'd started over, who'd earned every inch of this new life. Back at the cabin, I called Gregory. I didn't tell him everything, just that she'd shown up, that I'd sent her away. You okay? He asked, his voice low. Yeah, I said, and it wasn't a lie. I wasn't okay like I'd been that morning, but I wasn't broken either. I poured a glass of cider from Priya's thank you bottle and sat by the wood stove, the fire's warmth sinking into me. The barn would be there tomorrow, full of people who didn't know Alyssa, who didn't care about my past. I'd help the brewery guy, check on Lorenzo's salsa, maybe start a new Juniper Table project. She couldn't take that. Not this time. I pulled out my notebook, the one where I'd been tracking Celine's updates, bank records, board minutes, now the estate letter. I added today, Alyssa at the barn, her fake softness, her real hesitation. It wasn't proof, but it was something. Celine would know what to do with it. I closed the notebook, the fire crackling, and let the ocean hum through the window. She'd come back. I knew she would, but I'd be ready. Not with anger, but with everything I'd built without her. Juniper Table, the barn me. That was my answer. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was standing tall. I'm Colin Mercer, and I'm still reeling from Alyssa showing up at the barn yesterday, acting like she could slip back into my life after torching it. Our house sold, my things in garbage bags, my company gone. June Bay's been my refuge for 9 months, with Juniper Table and the community barn giving me purpose, a place to help locals like Lorenzo and Priya build something real. Her sudden appearance threw me, but I sent her away, told her to go home. I thought that was it, that I'd shaken her off like sand from my boots. But I knew her better than that. She wasn't done, and neither was I. The next morning, I woke to a gray sky, the ocean restless outside the cabin. I wanted to stay in, let the wood stove and coffee fix what sleep hadn't, but I'd promised Lorenzo I'd help with his food truck social media plan. Work was my anchor, and I wasn't letting her take that too. I grabbed my jacket and drove to town, the barn's familiar hum waiting to pull me back to myself. I spent the day buried in tasks, tweaking Lorenzo's Instagram posts, helping Priya draft a newsletter for her coding camp. The barn was alive, coders tapping away, a potter sketching glazed patterns in the corner. Nobody knew about Alyssa's visit, and I kept it that way. But her face, those wet eyes, that fake softness, kept creeping into my thoughts. By noon, I was restless, checking my phone for no reason. That's when Gregory caught me outside, leaning against my truck. You look like you're waiting for a fight, he said, half joking. I shrugged, not ready to spill. Just thinking, I said. He raised an eyebrow, but let it go. Lorenzo's got a crowd at the truck tonight, he said. Come by. Clear your head. I nodded, grateful for the distraction. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts, or her shadow. That afternoon, I got a text from Alyssa. Can we meet? Coffee, neutral ground. Please. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over delete. Part of me wanted to ignore her, keep building my life like she didn't exist. But another part, the part that still heard her 247 voicemails, the part that found the hidden inheritance letter, needed to know why she was here. Not for her sake, but for mine. I texted back. Diner, 2 p.m., don't be late. Neutral ground, like she'd said. I told Gregory the first was stepping out, asked him to stick around the diner just in case. He didn't ask why, just nodded, like he'd already guessed. I drove to the diner early, picking a booth by the window where I can see the street. The place smelled of fries and burnt coffee, and I sipped water, waiting, my pulse steady but loud. She walked in at 2:01, her coat damp from the drizzle. She slid into the booth across from me. No smile, just a quick glance like she was sizing me up. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice softer than yesterday. I didn't answer, just watched her, letting the silence stretch. She fidgeted, tucking her hair behind her ear, a nervous habit I hadn't seen in years. "You didn't even try to contact me," she said finally, like it was my fault. I leaned back, my hands flat on the table. "You moved out, sold our house, trashed my things, and told me to deal with it," I said, each word sharp but calm. What was I supposed to say? Her eyes dropped to the table, and for a second, I thought she might cry. But then she straightened, her voice harder. I panicked. "Okay?" I was overwhelmed. "I thought you wouldn't come back." I stared at her, the words landing like stones. Wouldn't come back? I'd been on a 10-day trip, not a desertion. She was rewriting history again, same as she'd done with the separation papers, the boardroom, the world. I could have yelled, listed every lie, 247 calls, the intercepted $600,000 inheritance, the way she'd framed me as the one who walked away. But I didn't. I saw Gregory at the counter, pretending to read a menu, and it grounded me. "Why are you here?" I asked instead, my voice low. She hesitated, then leaned in. "I made mistakes," she said, "but we could start over. Together." I almost laughed. The idea was so absurd. Start over? After she'd dismantled my life? Then she said it, the real reason, her voice dropping. "I heard about the inheritance. We could use it, rebuild." There it was, the letter she'd hidden, the $600,000 she'd known about for a year. She wasn't here for me. She was here for what I had now. I felt the anger rise, but I swallowed it, kept my face still. "There's no we," I said. "Not anymore." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off, sliding Celine's business card across the table. "Talk to her if you want anything," I said. "I'm done." I stood, leaving a few bucks for the water, and walked out. The drizzle hit my face, cool and sharp, and I breathed it in, letting it wash away her perfume. Gregory caught up with me outside, his eyes searching. "You good?" he asked. I nodded, meaning it. "Better," I said. I'd faced her, heard her out, and walked away on my terms. She didn't get to rewrite this moment. I drove to Lorenzo's food truck event, the crowd spilling onto the lot, music mixing with the smell of tacos. He waved me over, handing me a plate, halibut with that chili lime sauce I loved. "You look like you need this," he said, grinning. I ate standing up, the heat waking me up, the chatter around me like a shield. Priya was there, snapping photos for her camp's blog, and she nudged me. "You're famous now," she teased, nodding at a guy reading the Juniper Table article on his phone. I smiled, the weight of the diner fading. This was my life now, the barn, these people, the work we did together. Alyssa could chase her regrets, but she couldn't touch this. Back at the cabin, I sat by the wood stove, the fire's glow steadying me. I didn't need her explanations anymore. I had the letter, Celine's work, Juniper Table. I had enough. The ocean hummed outside, constant as ever, and I let it carry her words away. Tomorrow, I'd be back at the barn, building something she'd never understand. I wasn't running. I was free. I'm Colin Mercer, and I've been in June Bay for almost a year, rebuilding my life after Alyssa shattered it. Our house sold, my belongings in garbage bags, my company taken. Meeting her at the diner last week, hearing her ask about the $600,000 inheritance she'd hidden, confirmed what I'd known. She wasn't here for me, only for what she could take. I walked away, handed her Celine's card, and felt lighter than I had in months. Juniper Table, the barn, the people like Lorenzo and Priya, they're my world now, proof I can build something real without her shadow. I thought the diner was the end, that I'd closed the door for good. But Alyssa doesn't let go that easily, and neither does the truth. I woke up this morning to a quiet cabin, the ocean's hum filtering through the window. I was due at the barn to help a new guy with a bike rental app, but my phone buzzed before I could leave an email from Celine. "Call me. We've got something." My stomach tightened. I dialed her, standing by the wood stove, the fire still cold from last night. Celine didn't waste time. "I've got bank records," she said, her voice sharp with focus. Alyssa was siphoning marital assets for over a year, small transfers, nothing obvious, but it adds up. And there's more. I gripped the phone, waiting. She forged your signature on property documents, including the house sale. And the inheritance letter? She redirected it to a P.O. box before you got back. I sat down hard, the cabin's silence deafening. Forgery. Theft. It wasn't just betrayal, it was calculated. Every step planned while I was shaking hands on business trips. What now? I asked, my voice steady but thin. We're filing a countersuit, Celine said. Fraud. Breach of fiduciary duty. The works. I've got enough to make it stick, but it'll get ugly. You ready? I thought about the garbage bags, the for sale sign, her voice at the diner asking to start over. I'm ready, I said. Do it. I should have felt angry, but I felt clear, like the fog had lifted. Celine's evidence wasn't just a weapon, it was closure. Alyssa had lied to everyone, our friends, my board, even herself, but the truth was catching up. I drove to the barn, the ocean glinting under a rare sunny sky. Lorenzo was outside, tinkering with his food truck's awning, and he waved me over. Got a new sauce, he said, handing me a taco. Tell me it's not too spicy. I took a bite, the heat waking me up, and grinned. It's perfect, I said, and he laughed, already planning his next batch. Inside, Priya was setting up for a coding camp demo, her team buzzing around her. She caught my eye and nodded, like she could tell I was carrying something but didn't need to ask. The barn's energy grounded me, people working, dreaming, trusting me to help. Alyssa couldn't touch this. I spent the day on the bike app, breaking down costs and user flows with the new guy. It was simple work, but it kept my hands busy and my mind sharp. Between sessions, I checked in with others, a baker scaling her delivery, a coder debugging an app. Each conversation was a brick in something solid, something mine. I didn't tell anyone about Celine's call, not even Gregory, who stopped by with coffee and a bad joke about my ghost CEO nickname. I laughed, let it slide. The countersuit was coming, but it wasn't my whole story anymore. The barn was. These people were. I was packing up when Priya handed me a flyer for her camp's launch. You're coming, right? She asked. I nodded. Wouldn't miss it, I said, and meant it. Her smile stayed with me, a reminder of what I'd gained. Celine called again that evening, laying out the plan. We're filing tomorrow, she said. She'll get served by the end of the week. Expect pushback. She's already spinning stories to mutual contacts. I wasn't surprised. Alyssa had lied under oath during the separation, claiming I'd abandoned her. But Celine had bank statements, forged signatures, timestamps. She's trapped, Celine said. The inheritance is yours, legally untouchable. The house sale profits? We're going after those too. I thanked her, hung up, and stood by the cabin's window, the ocean dark and restless. I didn't want her money. I wanted her to face what she'd done. Not for revenge, but for the truth. I'd spent a year rebuilding, and I owed myself that much. Gregory and Greta invited me over for dinner, their kitchen warm with the smell of roasted vegetables. Ash, their daughter, was there, sketching on her tablet, teasing me about my famous interview. You're like a superhero now, she said, smirking. I laughed, the sound easier than I expected. Greta watched me, her therapist seeing too much. You seem different tonight, she said later, clearing plates. Lighter. I nodded, not explaining. Getting there, I said. They didn't push, just sat with me, the fire crackling in their living room. I thought about the countersuit, the evidence piling up like stones. Alyssa would fight, but she'd lose. Not because I was better, but because I was honest. Back at the cabin, I lit the wood stove, the flames catching fast. I pulled out my notebook, where I'd tracked everything, her voicemails, the letter, Celine's updates. I added today's call, fraud, forgery, countersuit. It wasn't just a list anymore. It was a map of how far I'd come. I didn't need to hate her. I needed to let her go. The ruling would come soon, Celine said, and when it did, I'd owe Alyssa nothing. Not a call, not a thought. The silence after would be mine, earned through every taco I'd tested, every app I'd debugged, every flyer I'd promised to show up for. I closed the notebook, the fire's warmth sinking in. The ocean hummed outside, steady and vast, and I let it carry the last of her weight. Tomorrow, I'd be back at the barn, helping the bike guy, cheering for Priya's demo. Tomorrow, I'd keep building, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Alyssa's lies were unraveling, and I was already free. I stood by the window, the stars sharp above the waves, and felt it. Peace, not loud, but real. I wasn't the man she tried to erase. I was me here, now. And that was enough. I'm Colin Mercer, and it's been exactly 1 year since I came home to find my life in 3 garbage bags, our house sold, and Alyssa's cold voice telling me to deal with it. June Bay saved me, the ocean's endless churn, the barn's messy hope, the people who trusted me to help them build. Juniper Table grew into something real, and the $600,000 inheritance, Barcelona property and solar shares she tried to hide gave me a foundation she couldn't touch. The countersuit Celine filed exposed her lies, forged signatures, siphoned assets, a year of calculated theft. The court ruled fast. She'd lied under oath, and I owed her nothing. Not a dime, not a call. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but I just felt free, like I'd finally exhaled. Now, I'm standing on a rooftop deck overlooking the Pacific, the air sharp with salt, and I'm signing a lease to expand Juniper Table up the coast. It's not a comeback story, it's mine, and I'm living it on my terms. This morning started like any other. I woke in the cabin, the wood stove cold but the ocean humming outside. I drove to the barn, where Lorenzo was prepping his food truck for a festival, his grin wide as he showed me a new logo I'd helped him tweak. Priya was there too, her coding camp now running in 3 towns, and she handed me a mug with her logo on it, her way of saying thanks. The barn buzzed with familiar faces, the bike app guy pitching to a local shop, a potter planning an online store, coders debating in the corner. I moved between them, offering advice, crunching numbers, listening. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Every handshake a step away from the man I'd been, angry, lost, betrayed. I didn't need Alyssa's apologies or her 247 voicemails anymore. I had this, people who saw me, work that mattered, a life I'd chosen. The lease signing was set for noon, a big step for Juniper Table. Gregory had found a space in a town an hour north, a warehouse like our barn, rough but full of potential. We'd run workshops there, mentor more startups, maybe even fund a few with my inheritance. I hadn't decided what to do with the Barcelona flat yet, sell it, keep it, visit. But the shares were already growing, steady enough to back our expansion. I drove to the new space with Gregory, the road winding past cliffs and pines. He was quiet, letting me think, but I caught his grin when we pulled up. "This is it," he said, nodding at the building. "Your next chapter." I laughed, shaking my head. "Ours," I said, and he clapped my shoulder, like he knew I meant it. The landlord was waiting, a no-nonsense woman with a clipboard, and I signed the papers on the hood of my truck, the ocean roaring below. It felt right, like locking a door I'd left open too long. Afterward, we grabbed coffee at a diner nearby, the kind with sticky tables and endless refills. Gregory raised his mug. "To not giving up," he said. I clinked mine against his. "To starting over," I replied. We didn't talk about Alyssa, she didn't belong here, but we talked about the barn, Lorenzo's festival, Priya's next camp. He mentioned Greta's idea for a Juniper Table retreat, a weekend for mentors to swap ideas. I liked it, saw it clear in my head. Campfires, whiteboards, the ocean as our backdrop. Driving back, I felt the weight of the lease in my pocket, not heavy but solid, like a stone I'd chosen to carry. June Bay was home now, not because I'd run here, but because I'd stayed. Back at the barn, the afternoon was full. I helped the potter set up her website, showed the bike guy how to track rentals without drowning in spreadsheets. Lorenzo swung by with tacos. His festival prep was chaos, but he was thriving. "You're coming, right?" he asked, wiping sauce off his hands. I nodded. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, and his grin was worth every late-night budget we'd fought over. Priya pulled me into a quick meeting, her team planning a scholarship for her camp. "You're good at this," she said later, packing up. "Not just numbers, people." I shrugged, but her words stuck, same as they always did. I wasn't the ghost CEO anymore, not even to myself. I was just me, showing up, doing the work. That evening, I went to the bluff, the one I'd walked to 100 times. The stars were out, sharp against the dark, and the waves crashed steady below. I thought about the year, garbage bags, Alyssa's lies, the inheritance, the countersuit. I'd been so angry then, so sure I'd lost everything. But standing here, I saw it different. I hadn't lost, I'd let go. The house, Omnicore, her, they weren't my story anymore. Juniper Table was. Lorenzo's truck, Priya's kids, the potter's glaze-stained hands, those were. I pulled out my phone, half expecting a ghost call, but it was quiet. Alyssa had stopped reaching out after the ruling, her voicemails slowing to nothing. I never changed my number, not out of hope, but because I didn't need to. I changed what I picked up. Greta invited me for dinner, and I went, the warmth of their kitchen wrapping around me. Ash was there, sketching superheroes, teasing me about my boring flannel. "You're cooler than you look," she said, smirking. I laughed, easy and real. Greta watched me, her calm seeing everything. "You're home," she said later, passing me a beer. I nodded, no words needed. They'd been there, Gregory at the diner, Greta with her brownies, Ash with her jokes, every step of this year. I didn't say it, but I hoped they knew what it meant. Back at the cabin, I lit the wood stove, the fire catching fast. I opened my notebook, the one full of Celine's updates, my lists, the truth I'd fought for. I didn't need it anymore, not like I had. I added one last line. Lease signed. Juniper table grows. Then I closed it, set it in the drawer with Priya's mug, Lorenzo's napkin sketches, the thank you notes I'd never admit I kept. The ocean hummed outside, and I stood by the window, the deck's outline just visible in the dark. People called me a comeback, but I hadn't come back. I'd moved forward. Alyssa was gone, her lies undone, and I was here, whole in a way I hadn't been. I didn't need to be seen anymore, not by her, not by anyone. I saw myself. That was enough.